All right. I know that you did a little bit of introductions, but I thought it'd be helpful if everyone just spent a couple minutes just talking about kind of what they do, who they are, what they do at the company, and kind of how they're thinking about AI in their business moving forward. We'll start with Mr. Professor Rob Master over here.
So how you doing? Rob Master. I'm an adjunct at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I teach a class called Building Brands in Digital Age. I'm coming to just finished my fourth year of teaching. But that's a side gig. I spent the last almost 30 years working in marketing and media. Spent 20 plus years at Unilever. I did a stop at McKinsey, an organization called Shark Ninja, and then in January I'll be on to something new and exciting. But I will remain teaching. So I'm going to bring a different angle to the panel of how it's being treated and managed in academics and with students. So that'll be my angle.
Awesome. Kathleen?
Hi, yes, Kathleen Nagle. I'm an AVP of Sales at Teads, which is an ad tech outfit. We're a platform that pioneers omni-channel creative experiences and marries that in premium publisher environments. I come from the pub side. That's been my background forever. I used to work at the artist formerly known as Meredith, now Meredith, Time Inc., all, and then also at Hearst and a couple of other ad tech outfits. But AI, machine learning, everything is just intrinsic to our platform as an ad tech provider. So it's interesting to extrapolate exactly where it starts and ends with us, but really excited to talk about it from a creative lens today.
Hi, I'm Leslie Koch. Not Koch, but I liked how you said it. That was good. Very authentic. I am the SVP of Creators and Social Strategy at TelevisaUnivision. So what that means is I run a paid social agency within the company as well as a creator agency. And AI is very important to what we do. It's a huge trend in the social and creator space, so I'm really excited to be here today.
Hi, my name's Toby. I'm the Chief Product Officer of Jacquard. We generate AI content at massive scale, high-performant content for brands such as Walgreens and Adidas. I'm based here in New York, despite the accent, looking forward to having a conversation.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. All right, maybe Leslie, we'll start with you, but I think with all these questions, we can just open up. We want to have just a good conversation here. Given that we're kind of talking about kind of creative strategies and creative media strategies, I'm not sure that everybody thinks about kind of TelevisaUnivision as kind of an AI-led and kind of social-led company. But maybe you can just talk a little bit about how AI is transforming what you're doing on a day-to-day basis and how that's permeating into the culture of the company.
Oh, sure. Well, I would say AI is a tool that people in social media have been using for over a decade. So all of the social platforms have AI embedded for their targeting and optimization. So if you have a social team, they're probably the experts in AI at your company for now. So we're very familiar with using AI for targeting and for campaign execution. I think the difference now is with OpenAI rolling out and ChatGPT and all of these consumer-facing generative AI products. Now it's much more about applications for content and how can we take it to the next level in front of consumer-facing creative. So I would say we're not quite there yet, just because of all of the concerns that exist about content and licensing, but we're really using it a lot to help on the back end, like with editing and formatting content, and also helping ideate campaigns.
So it sounds like it's starting with productivity and then figuring out how to start to think about creative and media. I mean, I don't know, kind of Kathleen, if you're seeing the same kind of in your world.
Yeah, I think the biggest exercise we have, so obviously from creative optimization standpoint, all of those things, it's embedded in our platform, but from a creative perspective, we're really trying to scope as many vendors as possible in the creative space that we can partner with to continue to optimize and build content and personalize. And so, for instance, we've just scoped a new partner that we work with called Neurons, which is actually an AI generative tool that's able to test creative and understand how it's garnering attention and how the message is being received and how it's resonating, and it's being road test against human-based panels as well to see, like, are you garnering attention? Are you having a very much resonating message? Is it too complex? Where are you seeing people drop off? And we're actually using that tool to pre-test creative for our partners on our platform, as well as do in-flight optimizations, and be able to really see how we can do that, which used to be a very manual optimization-led, like, in all the dashboards, seeing all the performance, we're now being able to leverage that and deploy that on campaigns. And we're seeing a lot of major brands lean into it with us to be able to iterate creative and build upon that. So that's been a major tool, which then takes, again, like building productivity. Our then creative strategists and our designers can lean into much more high-touch projects instead of being really focused on that in the day-to-day. So that's been an exciting development for us from a creative standpoint.
Toby, I think you could probably add a little bit more perspective, being kind of an AI native company, and kind of how you are thinking about that in terms of kind of productivity and creative and media.
Yeah, I think I have a bit of a hot take on a lot of this stuff around co-pilots and assistants, and I think a lot of them are missing the point largely. I think the value that AI brings and the products that we're building is how do you get massive scale and automation out of AI. It's not about, if you think about creating something is kind of commoditized at this point. You can create language. We're beginning to create images. Sora came out the other day and create videos. And yes, it's inevitable that they're going to get better and better and better. And more accurate and less biased and all these other things. But what that enables you to do, the analogy I like is why do cars have brakes, right? Cars have brakes so you can go fast, right? They don't have brakes so you can slow down because you wouldn't go fast if you didn't have, if you weren't able to slow down. And so if we apply all the controls to creativity and we can put these things on guardrails effectively, you do things at massive scale. And right now we're in this period where creation is kind of turned into curation. Generate some language, work out which ones you want to use. But the value of AI and the way we see it is not generating something for you and doing something that you were able to do before, but it's doing something 1,000 times, 100,000 times, 1,000,000 times, 10 million times. These AI machines don't sleep, they don't eat, they don't go home at 5 p.m. And so I think right now we're in this kind of inflection point where assisting you in doing something is nice, but actually, what if you had 10,000 assistants and 1,000,000 assistants? And what if you could generate millions of pieces of copy and millions of images? What does that mean for personalization? So I think when it comes to how it's affecting the creative process, I think ultimately we're only at the very beginning of what it's going to be able to do in terms of being able to really resonate and personalize communications at a scale that's not possible. It's going to create use cases which we don't even think about right now. And so that's what we're thinking about and where it's going to disrupt.
I love that, and I think that's true. I mean, I think we are just at the kind of the first inning of this, quite frankly. You kind of touched upon this idea of kind of like a million assistants. I think there's a lot of headlines of this idea of AI kind of just replacing humans, but I think we believe that it's not AI that's going to replace humans. It's it's your colleague that really understands how to leverage AI that's going to replace someone that doesn't. And so kind of this concept of how you find that right balance and marriage between kind of human and worker and kind of these tools, I think is something that we wanted to explore. I am curious actually from your point of view, like how you're thinking about that from the lens of teaching and how you're thinking about that in terms of even just how your students are using it.
Yeah. So it's interesting. It's really, it's been scaled through ChatGPT. It's been around, but I think accessible is where the last couple of years. And so, it's been redefining academics as we know it, whether they're ready for it or not. In many cases, I don't think academics are ready for it. But actually, at Wisconsin, the business school where I'm teaching, they have been very much embracing it. They're bringing in all these, 7 faculty this year, just focused on AI. And so for me as an adjunct, and what I've done is a couple of years ago, I put all my questions, all my exam questions into ChatGPT as an example. And within seconds, it gave me answers that were phenomenal. So it required me to actually completely change my kind of go-to-market strategy with the students. I've changed all my questions. And it also, because my philosophy is, and I say in class 1, I want you to embrace AI. Like, this is the future. I'm not here to, but use as a thought part of really encouraging students to engage in the way, get their hands on it, because I think, as you said, AI is not going to replace you. It's going to be the person who understands AI. I think is to get them to feel comfortable with it, but not be lazy with it. And I always joke, like in the first couple of classes, every class I have an exam question on that class. And so I post the question on the screen, and everyone's like writing it down, taking pictures, and I click, and I say, by the way, here's how ChatGPT answered my exam question. So don't cut and paste, because I know what's going on. But it's really about getting people, and I think that's the power of it, is to really encourage at an early age the prompts, the thought partners, and I think it's actually, it will transform, and it's begun already, academics, and I think for good in that it provides this much more creative approach to exams and questions that like get people thinking and not just cutting and pasting.
Yeah, no, I like that. I mean, this idea of a thought partner, I think, is how we're thinking through it as well. You know, I don't know, kind of, Leslie, if you're seeing kind of the same in your world, how you are leveraging it as an assistant and a tool for, kind of your teams rather than, kind of a replacement, even in this world of, becoming more productive. How do we think about turning us all into superhumans?
Well, that's a great question, because AI is not at the point where it stands alone. You definitely need humans guiding the tools and querying them and editing them and revising them and checking them. So we always have humans driving our creative process. I'll give you an example. So this is my personal life, but it was my mother's birthday. We were in Florida celebrating, and I wanted to do a fun quiz based on her birth year. So I said, ChatGPT, give me 10 questions for this fun family-friendly quiz for her birth year. And it spit it out immediately. I was super excited. I went into Word. I found a way to add little pictures. I printed it out on the work printer. So Fern, don't tell anyone. But then I get to the restaurant, and I go, let me just check this. Half the answers were wrong. They were factually incorrect. So I would say that just gives you an example. Like, we need to work with this technology. We need to train it. We need to check it. One way we're using it right now is actually, we have a lot of linear content. So for example, we have soccer games. We had Copa America this year. We have Gold Cup next year. So we have a lot of sports content. So what we're able to do is use tools to edit that down into vertical formats and then run it on social. So bring it to a new audience. So that's an example where it's not, we're not creating images in AI, but we are using it to drive efficiency.
I love that. Just building a little bit, kind of Toby, I just want to kind of pivot, go back to, kind of this idea that like being able to kind of personalize content at scale. I think that has been, kind of the dream of marketers of, kind of mass one-to-one personalization and customization. I'm wondering, if you can talk just a little bit more just on how you're thinking about leveraging AI to kind of do this and kind of like the evolved narratives that you can start to tell.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. That we haven't really kind of noticed it, I think, collectively, how much content is a bottleneck in nearly every stage of the marketing process. Why do we do segmentation? We do segmentation because we want to group users together to show them a certain piece of content. But if you had just as many pieces of content as you do end recipients, you don't need to segment anymore. You can show that person the one thing that they want to see and be relevant. And so at every part of the marketing stack and segmentation and delivery and distribution can all be rapidly changed by producing more and more content. And so if you can produce massive amounts of content, and you can do so that's safe and on brand and without bias, and it has the right guardrails, and that's what we're working on today, that enables you to actually have the personalized campaign that you've always wanted without the need for weird merge tags and hi first name, you forgot this product name in your basket. You can do things in entire natural language, and you can generate entirely personalized images. And I think that's really interesting. Being able to do that solves a lot of the data challenges that people had later down the funnel. So I think that's really interesting. And I also think it opens up this thing I was referring to earlier, opens up so many more use cases that we weren't able to do today. And this is where the human comes into it as well, because we think about human creativity as the spark, but this AI piece is the fuel, right, that really gets this automation system actually going. If you think about, we think about different ways that high volume content can really make an impact, is things like product detail pages or product descriptions, right? If I go on a website, a product is described to me in the same way it's described to everybody else, right? But what happens if we can actually describe a product to individuals in a completely unique way? That requires thousands of product descriptions, but we can now do that. I can speak to my friends and with my mates, I can tell them to watch a movie I watched on Netflix last night, and it's got the guy that he likes in it, and it's got this person. It's like that other movie they liked. But when I go on Netflix, it's described to me in the same way it's described to them. So actually using massive content at scale enables you to do personalized emails, push notifications, CRM channels, media, allows you to do product descriptions, entirely personalized websites where everything is unique to the user. And I think that's what automation creates more than assistance. And I think that's where personalization can really come into it through massive content at scale.
I love that. Kathleen, I don't know if you were finding kind of the same within Teads and kind of as these offerings increase, what marketers are asking of kind of the capabilities of the company.
Yeah, I think being able to be very nimble and consistently personalized creative is the biggest request, and being able to navigate AI within the creative experience. Because of that demand, we're actually building out our own very creatively named Creative Builder tool called Creative Builder Tool. And what we're going to be able to do with our own generative AI is be able to scrape a digital asset pack or a website and be able to literally build out in a full omni-channel suite of creatives for our off-the-shelf products. So for our partners, we're going to be able to say these specific CTAs, these products, this tagline, all of that we're taking from pre-approved, already existing brand assets, we're going to be able to build those out for you in the matter of seconds and be able then to also personalize them in the matter of seconds. So that's the sort of stuff that we're doing, because then what we really want to lean into and what we want to continue to do is things like our creative workshops. That's where we want to then free up bandwidth to be able to then have these one-to-one brand conversations to build out bespoke creative experiences with our brand partners. Because we know there's still a lot of performative media that has to happen, but can we make more of the off-the-shelf experience AI-driven and then really be able to lean into where we can flex with the more bespoke experiences? And we're seeing adoption already, and we're going to be building that in as a self-serve tool into our platform, as well as with our managed service capacities too.
So can I just ask, Toby, you mentioned this use cases. I think that's like, if I think about, that's like where the opportunities, again, like this year I had an AI specialist come to class. I changed my curriculum every year, and I'm like, we need a class on AI. This guy was terrific, 14 certifications, he was terrific. But it's funny, because a couple students, just during the Q&A, they're like, can you give me use cases? You're talking so broadly. What's a use case? I think that's the challenge, is developing use cases that people can understand and say, okay, this is a guide. Because we grew up in an era where it was like, okay, you do this with marketing, this with media promotions, and you have an example. How are you guys seeing good use cases come to life?
I mean, from my perspective, nothing is scarier than just a blinking cursor. If you gave someone ChatGPT, I gave my mum ChatGPT 2022 and 3.5 was coming out, and she asked it what day is it? What day is it today? And what are you supposed to ask it? You don't know, and even then, because it's an LLM, it didn't even get the right answer. So you need to. It's almost like, I used this example earlier. We're in this stage of the internet where people are uploading the yellow pages to the internet, and everyone's like, cool, that's a great use case. Or we can put a map on the internet, that's a cool use case. And actually, it's cool, right? Sure, it solves a bit of an issue. But actually, you got to think in 1999 about Uber and about DoorDash and social media and all the things that the internet enabled. And we're in this world where we're kind of still really exploring it. And it's happening in a much faster clip. There's this thing called Amara's law, where people overestimate the value of technology in the short term and they underestimate in the long term. We're kind of thinking it's amazing, but we're kind of coming up with these, in my opinion, kind of weak use cases, right? These kind of efficiency gains, slight productivity improvements, when I think everyone just needs to think far bigger, that this is going to have a massive disruptive impact on all of our lives, on humanity in general. And we need to think, I've used this term before, but we need to think about what's not humanly so possible, right? What can we not do today? Not how can AI do what I'm doing now instead of me? What does it enable that I'm not even able to do in the first place? And that's where I think this scale piece comes in.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, no, you're
I was going to say, just to jump on that, one of the best pieces of advice I received about AI is just open an AI tool. So just started with ChatGPT. You can use Claude. You can use Meta AI, which is free with Meta, Facebook and Instagram. But just open it at the beginning of your day, leave it open, and just anything that comes up, query AI and see if it could help. Because I thought that was very extreme advice when I received it. But it's really true because you don't know what it can do until you test it out. So for me, it's replaced a lot of searching, online searching, for example. And the only way you're going to know is by testing it.
I think for use cases for us, two cool examples that we're just starting to deploy. You can catch a theme here. We're working with a partner called AudioStack, which is an AI generative production studio. And so they are able to build out AI generated voiceovers. So we actually were working with an auto partner where we were able to take their hero asset, work with AudioStack to sub hundreds of variations of the voiceover, and then it could do a call to action to listen and understand where your nearest dealership was. And it could dub that in and say, go to Ray Cattina Lexus on Boston Post Road in Larchmont. And it can dub that in. And we were able to iterate hundreds of versions of that creative and then be able to deploy that across an omni-channel set of inventory. And that was done in the matter of what would have, probably never been possible, right? Another cool example, so we're in content-based environments, so we do content listening, right? So which is just our very advanced contextual AI. And what we're starting to build out is virtual storefront experiences within our ad experiences, and all of the data and signaling is going to be about things you consistently read about. So if you're going to go into for instance, a Nike virtual storefront that we've set up, if you're constantly over-engaging in soccer content, we're going to continually outfit the virtual store and content, in soccer products. And it's something that we're also putting into practice to continue to iterate, because we want to personalize, but in a way that people want to lean into. Because we think content listening is a very great form of understanding what people are in market for. We don't want to go over, into the creepy distrust. AI is now freaking me out. I need to turn off everything that is AI generated. So we want to make it a welcomed experience where we're personalizing your shopping and other touch points that people expect to be personalized.
Can we go a little deeper on that? This creepy bit. I think we have been maybe victim as an industry of leveraging data, but maybe over leveraging data in a way that consumers are finding a little creepy. I don't know if people have had kind of personal experience of being in their kitchen, kind of with one of the smart speakers and talking about something, and all of a sudden kind of that comes up on your phone, and that just feels like a line that shouldn't be crossed. And when we talk about this idea of kind of mass customization and personalization at scale, like how are we thinking about kind of not making those same mistakes and being on kind of the right side of the consumer and thinking about the privacy concerns throughout this?
I can just take that. I think there's a lot of consumer apprehension about AI right now, and we've seen that in recent weeks. Some brands that have used AI to create advertising content are getting some backlash. There's a lot of fear that AI is going to take jobs. So I think that's something as marketers we have to be aware of. So we need a very purposeful strategy for AI and positioning if we're using it in our content. So for social platforms, you actually have to disclose when you're using AI to create content. So it's not something that passes under the radar. On Instagram, they actually scan the content automatically, and if they detect AI, there's a disclaimer. So it's something that we really need to get ahead of and think about and make sure that you have a consumer strategy in mind as well.
I think from my perspective, it's about intent and relevance. I think if I walk past the store and I get a notification, a message, an email that says, you just walked past our store and we've got a pair of jeans half price, I'm annoyed because I'm just like, how did you know that? And I don't want to buy your silly jeans and like all this stuff. But if I got a text that said, your appointment with doctor, whatever, due to this condition is in 30 minutes, it's a 15-minute walk from where you are today, and please confirm here your appointment. That second one used way more data, right? Used my health information, used my location and where it was, but I'm like, that's actually really relevant and helpful, and I enjoyed it, right? So I think it's all about relevance, and it's about the intention behind the message that you're trying to convey. I think using data gratuitously, I really hate when an email or anything uses my first name. It's like I've never written an email to anybody that says hi first name in it. And all these brands are sending me emails being like, hi Toby, hi Toby, hi Toby, hi Toby. And it's just like you're doing it to tell other marketers that you're using personalization when it doesn't really mean it. If anything, now I know it's from a brand, right? And not actually from a person. So you've identified yourself as someone who doesn't really know me. So using data in this kind of gratuitous way, I think, is unnecessary. But the great thing what AI does, it means you can be more relevant with less data. So you can ask customers for less data, and you can use machine learning and models to ultimately be far more targeted, to generate relevant content that doesn't feel like a robot's talking to me. So I get to give you less data, and actually the last thing is when I give a brand data and they don't use it, I'm just a bit like, why did I just give you that and you're not using any of it? Or at least it's not clear to me how you're using it. That makes me suspicious. So what AI does, it means I get to give you less data, they get to be more relevant, I get less spam, it becomes a much more natural exchange, and the content is more relevant. So I think AI can actually, even though everyone thinks that everything is going to be way more creepy and way more intrusive, I think as long as the intent is there and the relevance is there, actually it's going to make, ideally, everything a far better experience for consumers.
Yeah, I have a bit of a different take on the creepiness. I think part of it's generational. We view our life and everything around us through the lens for which we grew up and how we evolved. And young people have a very different perspective. Their lens of life is just not a little bit different than ours. It's completely different than ours. And so, we have a generation of people who just don't see ads that are not relevant to them. Like I always joke in class, like, first of all, no one has a cable bundle. No one. One of my 85 students gets the newspaper, because he's so tactile. He came up to me after class, so I said, show me hands. He came up after class to say, I get the Wall Street Journal because I love the way it feels, like it's, So, the lens for which they view the world is very different. So I always joke, like, who sees an ad on Instagram that's not relevant? And like, there's no hands go up. And like, the occasion they watch television, they're like, I see all kinds of ads. The creepiness factor, like, they're born with that. Like, for us, it's creepy because we used payphones. We had answering machines. Like, we had a very different life. That's not a life or lens for which they view the world. So for them, they're always getting things that like, hey, Toby, hey, like that's just how, they don't know different. Yeah. And so I think that's the part we have to be mindful of as marketers, is projecting our view of the world on them who feel completely different. And I think, again, I'm making this broad generalization, but I think it's important to remember the lens for which they view the world.
I was going to say, I think that's true just in paid social. Again, we've been targeting consumers based on their preferences and interests for a decade. So I think if you've ever bought shoes on Instagram because you were served an ad for shoes, you know what I'm talking about. Like, that's everyday behavior now.
Yeah. But Toby, I think you hit on the relevance and intent. I just think for us, we think about intent. There's no, they just, for them, it's just relevance. Yeah. They don't think about like it's intended. They didn't grow up like we grew up.
Yeah. Right. But I think us as marketers, I think getting it right, in that example, when you bought the shoes and you still get the ad, for another month, is annoying, right? And,
I don't know. I just buy more shoes. Is that just
me? That's the thing. I think shoes is okay. I bought like a basketball hoop, like one of those big $500 and then for like 3 weeks later, I'm getting more basketball hoops. It's like I'm not like a stadium.
I just bought it.
I have one.
Yeah, literally.
So there's a way for AI to tackle that, I'm sure. You also mentioned in kind of your personal example, kind of leveraging AI, but it was kind of confidently wrong. And you had to fact check it. And we were noticing that. I mean, that was kind of a big insight, just the bias that still exists. And it would be good to get your take of thinking about how to leverage AI, kind of through the biases that exist, and kind of how to use it in a way that is inclusive.
I think that's really important. So at TelevisaUnivision, our mission is to inform, entertain, and empower the U.S. Latino community. So we have an obligation to really make sure that the content we're producing is respectful and authentic to that community. So when you look at AI, we have to really ask a few questions. One, is the data set being used for these models? Is it an ethical data set? Is it representative of different communities? If it's scraping images from online, do those images include light-skinned people, dark-skinned people, people of different backgrounds? Because that does affect the models that are being used. So that's one question. A second one is, these tools are available, but how am I using them? Am I using them in an authentic way? So I think a lot of the hot use cases now are using dubbing or subtitling. Like Mr. Beast can now speak 40 different languages. But I guess I would stop and say, like, what are we trying to accomplish? Because if you're having someone, for example, with Spanish, dubbed into Spanish, what message is that communicating? Is that authentic? Is that the right way to proceed? So we do actually do a lot of work checking and correcting Spanish translations. So that is a personal example. But yeah, it's something to really be considerate of.
That's great. Well, I think we might be at time. I don't know if we are allowed to open it up for questions.
Of course, we have. We can do, I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes still, if there is any other questions.
Going to like the accuracy conversation. It's not that deep. Sorry, can you hear me? On like the broad brushstrokes of like accuracy and kind of going into like agency responsibility, just want to get your hot takes on something that happened recently. It was like an agency kind of wanted to show off and like show us how they use their AI tools to generate a podcast that like no one had any time to listen to, but that's a whole nother conversation. But at the end of it, it was like, so what do you want from me to say as a result of this? Because my questions were like, how accurate is the information and where do we come from? So I want to get your hot takes on like how A, you would handle that, like if you were a client or if someone's doing that, but then B, like is the age of citing references and sources like dead? Like is that it? Did that just happen? And how do you know?
So I can give a crack on that. So yeah, I mean for us, we build a lot of things into the way we generate content to make sure it's as accurate as possible. There's multiple ways to do it. There's things like retrieval augmented generation. There's things like ensuring that it doesn't go off certain rails, ensuring that you have a great diversity of input into the models themselves. It's interesting. My view is two things. One is more money went into AI, both from a government and corporate perspective last year than went into the moon landings across the entire Cold War on an inflation-adjusted basis, right? Like, the models will get more accurate in increasing amounts. They're precipitously getting more and more accurate. Unless we give it an instruction set that adds more bias into it, which is the problem we've got in general at the moment with a lot of these large foundation models. So they will get more accurate. They're not always accurate. Hallucinations, I also think, is a bit of a weed, right? In meaning, to some people, hallucinations, some people it's not. If we sent a marketing campaign that said, grab half-price sweaters off in July, you would be like, that doesn't sound right, until you're in Australia. And then you would, right? Because July it's cold. So, I think the perception of what a hallucination is and the accuracy of what you're saying is important. But I also think it's not like errors in marketing do not already exist. I get emails all the time that say, sorry, we didn't mean to send you that last email. We didn't mean to say... So the models don't need to be perfect. They need to be better than people. And there's an inflection point where as long as they are more accurate than people, and they're becoming more and more accurate, and there's different ways that we can improve the accuracy, which is happening and will happen, I think, in relatively short order. If you look at some of the models that OpenAI are coming out with O1, the O1 preview, and that became O1 last week, I don't see this as a problem which we're going to be talking about in 2, 3, 4 years' time. Currently is a problem. Certainly a problem with image and video models, as you can see with them. But I think this is a problem that if we've got much bigger problems if this thing doesn't get solved.
But actually, I love that question. I have a funny kind of story to that, was that, so I do a class on digital transformation, and the point at the exam question is, come up with a company that's in need of a digital transformation, and based on the lessons of the class, what would you do for that company? So one student this semester handed in Bed Bath & Beyond in need of a digital transformation. So again, I encourage thought partner, But like, so I called out, I didn't call out the student by name, but certainly in the write-up, was like, I'm like, one of you, like, use AI, connect with it, but the importance of like fact-checking or just engaging with the content in terms of citing, understanding what it's telling you. And of course, as I explained to the class, Bed Bath & Beyond could have used this strategy 5 years ago. So I think it's important to like be very clear as to like, as you're using it, what you're citing, how you're experiencing, et cetera.
I was going to add too, I think we have a higher standard as marketers and in the ad industry also because consumers are seeing our work. So what you're putting out there is being listened to. If it's a podcast, you have to make sure it's accurate. You have to make sure it's not using licensed content in appropriate ways. So I do think it comes down to like the human vetting becomes super important at this stage because I don't think we're at this stage now where I would trust like an entire podcast created by an AI.
This question is for Leslie, but I guess anyone can answer. But Leslie, since you work with creators, I think we're talking a lot about AI at the brand marketing level, but specifically when working with creators, I'm curious if you're utilizing AI in that in that capacity in your creator strategy.
I think AI is really helping creators a lot. And again, some of it's streamlining the workflows, but even I've talked to creators, like a travel creator, for example, who takes notes on her trips. She just fed all the notes into an AI tool and said, come up with 5 ideas for blog posts or social posts, script the social post. They're also using it just for thumbnails on YouTube, things that ordinarily would be tedious and take a lot of time. Creators are often they're entrepreneurs and they often have they might have a manager, they might have some people they work with, but they're really doing everything. So I think it's really helped their process a lot.
We have one final question, if it's okay with you, coming from there.
Great, thanks. So, the title of this is about media and AI. And I would love to know if you were talking to, let's say your kids are 25 years old and they're in the media industry. And you wanted to give them some advice on, how they should think about that industry moving forward, whether it's on the sales side or the media buying and planning side. So each of you could probably address that. But just what are the skill sets you would need? Why, should you stay in this business? Like, what kind of advice would you give to a 25-year-old in media?
Probably people don't agree with me, but I don't think you should use it to generate any sort of outreach or content you're sending to partners. I think a lot of people now are like, you're seeing even
There
the
should
younger...
be a 5 minutes long standing ovation of what you just said right now.
So I don't know. Can you churn out way more outreach, 100%, but I think also we're seeing the younger generation, like we're getting thank you notes that we know were generated after an interview from AI, and that's just not how the tool should be used. I guess that would be, I know that's not a very simple and elementary way, but that even translates to building brand partnership. Like, you see on LinkedIn, everyone bragging about how many touch points they've had a day and how many emails they're sending and productivity at its highest, but it's horrible. Even putting in, I've tested it too. Like, what would this email look like? And I'm like, I would never send this. Like, it's horrible, and it really also just detracts from your brand building for yourself. So, I would be my biggest piece of advice. Still craft in your own voice and write everything as you would, and not focus just on churning out productivity. But
so I would say a couple things. I think it's funny. There was just a piece of research done, and actually the dean just told me this, that the biggest group that they're concerned about with AI are ages 30 to 45. And it reminded me of the internet, because I was also in that space in the internet, because it's like young people are like ready, and parents of those young people are getting it. It's everyone in between who's like not sure how to handle it and not seeing it. But my recommendation is lean in. Live the space. I think you got to get on the front line of understanding like all the tools and just play with them, work with them, and then it's finding your voice within that context. I think it's important that I would say to a 25-year-old, get a sense for who you are. What is your brand? Who's the brand of you? And how do you then leverage the tools that are now enabling around you to bring your brand and voice to life? But I think leaning in is the most important thing.
I'm going to add one other thing. this is titled Creative Media Strategies, and I think that, you know, over the last, you know, 10 to 15 years, you know, kind of the industry has really leaned head forward into data, and I think, you know, the type of people that were getting hired into our industry, you know, we're coming from math backgrounds, and, you know, we're really valuing coding and data analysis, and I think all of that is true. But now that we have these tools that might be able to help us and even do that more efficiently, I think this idea of, you know, kind of curiosity and that curiosity quotient, you know, is higher than ever. I think, you know, kind of CQ and EQ are going to be valued more in, you know, kind of tomorrow's world than it has ever been. And I think, you know, this goes back to kind of this idea of how humans can start to work with these tools. You know, we have the creativity and, you know, this idea of being able to kind of see around corners and create something new and engaging that, you know, maybe the tools are not able to do.
I love it because IQ now is democratized. Like everyone almost can start with the same amount of information because of AI. So it's like, how do you leverage and think about the stories of that?
Just one note too, I have a 10-year-old son, so he's in the 5th grade, he's not 25, but I think they're going to be teaching us how to use AI, frankly.
Definitely.
Like we had a family project just for fun one weekend, we decided to create a YouTube channel, and he and I created a YouTube channel in 5 hours with a video. We had to disclose it was AI, so it got 5 views. I'm going to blame the tag, but it's a fun project. Like these kids are at the forefront of it.
Guys, thank you very much. I think that on the last question, it could have lasted 20 minutes on its own. Thank you all.